Hi guys, I'm Marsh, and one thing about me is that I love creating cute outfits for my characters. A lot of people see me turning desserts into characters and wonder, how did I get that outfit to translate so well? And today I'm going to teach you guys how. Okay, let's go. Disclaimer, I'm not a fashion designer, but I do have a history of staring at people on subways to see what they're wearing. I'm joking, I don't do that, guys, and you guys shouldn't do that either. At least if you're gonna do it, be subtle about it. Sometimes designing outfits for your OCs is either the most fun thing ever or it's the most stressful thing ever. But no need to fear because I'm here to help you. Today we're gonna go over inspiration, silhouette, fashion sense, accessories, functionality, and personality. I think those are the main things you need to think about when making outfits for your OCs, because while yes, your OC should be very cute, very, fun to look at, they should also make sense, So without further ado, to make sure your OC doesn't look like they just crawled out of the Walmart clearance section, we're going to talk about inspiration. Every person who's an artist who's ever drawn anything ever and has ever been on the art side of the internet knows I'm going to recommend Pinterest because it's kind of made for us at this point. But anyway, you need inspiration because you can't design an outfit from nothing. Like, you can't do that, and don't let anybody tell you that they did. No one just gets an outfit that just pops in their head for no reason, unless your OC is like, I don't know, the Spot from Spider-Verse. Then you need an outfit. Your OCs need outfits that mirror their personality, what they do, their profession, etc., etc. You don't make costumes or outfits in a vacuum, unless your OC is an astronaut, in which case, yippee, your character design is done. Some cool sources you can find inspiration from are from Pinterest boards, fashion blogs, runway shows, anime screenshots, or just straight up looking at people in your real day-to-day life and seeing how they dress. If you like the way they dress, or maybe people who you think act like your character, you can take some of their fashion sense and put it into your character. One of my biggest tips when it comes to the inspiration phase is not copy and pasting. Don't look at one outfit from Pinterest and just take it completely and slap it onto your character. Look at multiple outfits and take bits and pieces from each. That way you have something that's more unique than if you just took it from a mannequin, When looking up inspiration, please keep in mind what your character does and or is and or their whole purpose. You don't want a ballerina in a bomber jacket. Like, it wouldn't make sense, or like maybe a princess but they're wearing rags. Like, it doesn't really, just make sure the aesthetic matches what your character is doing, unless you're going for that contradiction. And I always recommend doing contradictions. It makes designs way more fun. Now thinking about it, a ballerina in a bomber jacket actually sounds pretty cool. You can even model some of your OC's outfits off of your own wardrobe. Please don't do this if you're the type of person who wears the same hoodie every day, unless you and your character are twinning like that. If that's the case, then by all means, twin with your OC. Now I'm going to tell you guys how I implement this step. I'll do this for each step I go over. So firstly, with my sweet OCs, as you know, they're all based off of some sort of sweet, except for Naki. I haven't chosen her sweet yet, but this is something I like to do a lot because I love desserts and things like that, and I just transfer their designs into the character. But I don't like to make it like too obvious and too on the nose. So for each of my characters here, their inspiration was obviously the dessert they were inspired off of, colors they were inspired off of, and what I associate with those things. So for example, Bonnie, her tights are blue and white because it resembles the little blue and white birthday cake candles. That's an example of using what your character is for or what they are to influence the design. Another tip I recommend doing when it comes to inspiration is gather your own inspiration and then also try to look up Pinterest boards that match the same vibe you were going for, but have like little differences. That way you get like an even broader spectrum of what your inspiration can be based on what other people made or what other people collected. So yeah, to recap the inspiration section, make sure you have a Pinterest board or any other source of like reference you can look at. Think of what your character is and what they like to do, who they are, and you should be fine in collecting the actual references. Okay, now for the tip you're always gonna hear. We're gonna talk about silhouette. Silhouette is super important because it's a very simple and effective way to get a message across. So I'm gonna talk about shape language again, but very, very, very concisely because I've mentioned it like 3 times on my channel already. Triangles are dynamic, sharp, and aggressive. Circles are soft, round, and approachable. And squares are sturdy, reliable, and blocky. Using different variations and different combinations of these shapes in your character designs can give off different vibes of how the viewer or how the person who's looking at your character should perceive them. Something you can do in this stage is the silhouette test. Think of if your character was blacked out and you just saw their shadow on the wall or something. Would you be able to kind of tell what kind of person they are, or what, maybe how they act, maybe their vibe or something like that? Have you ever been like a child and scared in your room because there's like shadows on the wall? I guarantee you that the very tall triangular shadow shape scares you more than the very short circular curvy type shape, you know? This doesn't mean use silhouette to put your character in a box. It means you can come up with really creative combinations to convey your character perfectly, and also add what I love, contradictions. While generally you should want your shape language to convey exactly how your character is, but it's fun to play around with using different shape language completely different from what the personality is. Like, for example, if you had a character who was really tall and blocky, and think of Kingpin from Spider-Verse, but if he was like super nice and just loved, you know, like, don't use that example because that's so cliche, but you know what I mean. It's a fun juxtaposition. To convey even more how shape language kind of like how it actually works, okay, imagine an assassin, a villain known for, I don't know, killing off the strongest people in the world, right? Imagine them in dark colors, a long pointy cape, a triangular pointy hat, with like very sharp triangular knives, you know? Now imagine that same assassin, but in a bubble skirt and a tutu on top of each other, and possibly even a beret. Do they seem that scary anymore? I hope not, because if you find that scary, you possibly need therapy. And silhouette doesn't just go for clothes, it goes for anything that's like associated with your character. That means their hair counts, their weapon counts, their accessories, anything, their backpack, anything that goes on their person, it would add to their overall shape. That is silhouette. So to recap, circles are bubbly, triangles are scary, and squares are reliable. You want to use the shape language to convey how your character is, but you can also use it to make a contradiction and juxtapose your character. And yeah. Okay, step 3, fashion. The part where we decide if our OC is an icon, no cat's eye, or if they got dressed in the dark because they lost a bet with their best friend. I don't know, whatever. I don't know your OC situation. I don't know what they do in their spare time. Fashion is kind of everything. Like, yeah, your character's face and their hair really matters a lot, but also what they're wearing just tells you so much about the character that you wouldn't get if they weren't wearing clothes. Because if they weren't wearing clothes, they just look like any other naked person. You can learn more about a character through their outfit and more than like a monologue or a 3-page backstory, because nobody really wants to read all that. But they can just simply look at your OC and see like what type of person they are. Like if they're wearing socks with sandals, we clearly know that they're a crazy person who needs therapy and help. Okay, so clothes aren't just clothes. They're basically like, they're telling the personality. You know how people say don't judge a book by its cover, but that's exactly what everybody does. And then there's no way you can not judge a book by its cover. There's no way you look at a person and don't judge them by what they're wearing. You're going to figure out or infer some things about them based off what they're wearing. If your OC was like back in 2015 and they're wearing ripped jeans, a chain, and an anime hoodie with the like girls crying or whatever, then boom, we know they were an edgy loner loser who probably listened to Nightcore in the 6th grade. Okay, whatever. We know. We can tell. Or if your OC is in an over extravagant ball gown, then we know that they probably are super extra and probably need to tone it down. Your OC's clothes and their sense of fashion tells the story about them way before you can, or way before their way before their dialogue can. I'd also like to say, even if your OC has a certain fashion style, do not let cliches take over their character. Like, okay, you have a character who wears oversized clothing every day of the week and like that's it, like nothing else, like they literally look like they borrowed clothes from Shaquille O'Neal. It's not really giving us much to go off of unless that's like a crucial part of their personality, in which you have to work that into the story, etc, etc. Okay, or like you have an edgy OC with fishnets, combat boots, a leather jacket, and like 15 layers of bangs. I'm like, we get it, they're edgy, they listen to MCR in the 7th grade, you know, maybe they look like a Maya Mortal character. Look, like, we need to make sure that cliches aren't the only thing like present in your character design. This goes back to me saying that you need to gather inspiration from different sources. Or like your fantasy OCs that are like, the setting is like the 1600s and they have skinny jeans on. No, they didn't wear that, okay? They did not wear that. Make sure the things your characters are wearing make sense. And mind you, cliches aren't bad. I did explain this more in depth in my last character design video, but you can use cliches to spice things up, but you can't clutter them with cliches, like, and it's the same cliche. You have to make sure like you're doing something new and original, or taking two cliches that don't mix with each other and kind of trying to make them mix. My point is, don't make cookie cutter OCs that everybody else has. You don't want your character to be someone else's character, and someone else's character, and someone else's character, etc, etc. Now, one of the main things I like to think about, depending on what verse or what story I'm making a character from, like for example, I would think about this less when it comes to my sweet OCs, but I would think about it more when it comes to my GB OCs. It's practicality versus your aesthetic. In some cases, aesthetic matters more than practicality, and in some cases, practicality matters more. It truly depends on what universe you're going for. If you're going for a really realistic action universe, then you're gonna have to favor practicality. But if you're going for a more slice of life, really cute, fantastical, nothing makes sense type of thing, then aesthetic will probably matter more. But what I'm gonna say now is where the fashion police comes in. I'm not gonna have a character in the desert wearing 25 North Face jackets. It just doesn't make sense. Do I want them to die? It doesn't make sense. So why would I do that to them? Why would I do that to my poor character? Why would I do that? Have you ever looked at a character design and was like, okay, cool, that looks nice, but how do they move? Yeah, that's because the creator did not take into account practicality. Like, think about female character designs and how they're supposed to be knights flipping around doing all this, but she's literally in a G-string. It doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense at all. You have to think about practicality when it comes to your character designs. If you give your character 7 belts, 4 chokers, a corset on top of a corset, a cape, a sword bigger than their house, and they're fighting villains, they're they're not fighting villains, they're fighting scoliosis. That's what they're fighting, okay? How are they gonna do their job and slay monsters if they can't even move? They can't even move. They can't even slay a pose, okay? They need to be able to move. You have to think about how things actually work and function. And then on the other side of things, you have characters who are like under designed. Like, your character's supposed to be a warrior, but they're wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt that they got from the gas station for $2. It does not make sense. You have to make them like, no, that's not the Prince of a Universe. That is Michael from your 3rd period biology class, and you know it. And you know it. If your OC was a garbage disposal man, I would put him in a hazmat suit, because personally, I don't think any human wants to touch that stuff. So why would I make a garbage disposal character who's wearing a Speedo? Like, it wouldn't make sense. Or a scientist with no lab coat and goggles, trying to blow up the entire world, give themselves 3rd-degree burns. It wouldn't make sense. Like, I could go on for days about this. I truly could, because there's so many designs that don't make sense. Now, if it's like a gag, if it's like a joke, I think those are pretty cool. But like, the point is, I'm saying when you do it with intention. When people do it without the intention to, it doesn't make sense. We need to reel it in, guys. Think about practicality. Think about if your character can move. Think about your character can do the job that they're meant to do easily and without any issues. Okay, our next step is my favorite step, and it's details and accessories. This is like the difference between your OC looking like an actually fleshed out person with like a backstory and all that stuff, or looking like a sim where you don't have any custom content. You know, I've been there before, okay? I'm not judging. Accessories open up doors to storytelling. So for example, your character could have like the cliche necklace that their mother gave them before they died tragically, or a bracelet that they got from their best friend before they died tragically. You know, please don't use those cliches, but you can. I mean, as long as it's done really well. I feel like that's a thing we have to understand with character design. There's a lot of nuance. You can pretty much do anything you want. It's just how you execute it. Like, what they have on them can also like you can also infer how they interact with other characters. For example, if you have a character who always has everything in their purse, or always has a fanny pack on, then like you probably can infer that they have the whole world inside it, and they probably always have snacks for the people around them, or always have the first aid what did I just say? A first aid kit on hand. Details are also a simple way to set your OC apart from everyone else. Some OCs have details that like kind of completely make the character. For example, Shoto Todoroki from My Hero Academia. You recognize him by that scar. Boom, there you go. Or Zuko, you recognize him by that scar. You know, things that like easily make your character very recognizable. Or like Zoro and his 3 little earrings. I feel like those are accessories that, like, you know, are recognizable. And again, those little details can like reveal stuff about them. So like, for example, maybe your character always has their shirt inside out, or always has their shoe untied. Maybe they're lazy, or maybe they're forgetful, you know. Now, there's a fine line between details and a Where's Waldo puzzle. You want to like not be like old DeviantArt and have your OC have 17 piercings, glow in the dark nail polish with glow in the dark shoes, and then like a rainbow tattoo sleeve, and heterochromia, and like it changes with their mood, and like they can talk to the moon, and then like they have like sparkles of moon. Like, I don't even know what I'm talking about. Like, your OC doesn't have to wear the entire character creator catalog, okay? Like, they don't have to wear everything. They can change outfits too, you know, guys, right? You know, they don't have to wear the same thing every day. I know cartoon logic has like convinced you, but they don't have to. Your OC can change clothes. They can also shower. Yeah. And my last tip before I recap everything: too much versus too little. Like I just said, over accessorizing doesn't really do much for you. It just makes your OC very crowded. You don't want to do that. But also, making your character look like a blank slate isn't really good also, unless you're trying to make a very projectable OC. Then you've done your job. You've completed your mission. So to recap, before your OC files a lawsuit against you from the horrible outfits you put them in over these years, you should try to implement these tips and incorporate them when you're designing your next character, and maybe if you redesign one of your characters. Grab inspiration. You're not drawing someone who's like is basically in a void. You need inspiration to know exactly what your character should, not saying they have to, but should look like. Second, make sure your silhouette is recognizable, and like, even if you draw them as a stick figure, you'd be able to know what type of character this is, or maybe even what they do. If your design is like that top tier to where your silhouette can tell you like if your OC is a baker or not, then you've made it. You don't need this video, my friend. Third, use fashion to show off the personality. Make sure your character is unique and not just a cliche Pinterest board. finally sprinkle in details and accessories to give them life and kind of like more hints as to their personality and what they probably do, etc., things like that. Those are all my tips, guys. I'm pooped out. No more. I have no more wisdom to share. All you guys have to do is do all that stuff and boom, you've got an OC design that your character won't want to hit you for. So yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope it helped. You guys seem to really like my OC videos. Thank you guys very much. Please watch this video all the way through. Join the Discord because I'm doing a competition right now. And yeah, I love you guys. Marsh is out.